Hello and welcome to the podcast According to Sci-Faith, where we discuss topics revolving around the compatibility of science and faith. I'm Joshua Göcking and you're listening to According to Sci-Faith. Episode 51, Who Created God? So when talking about religion and science and faith and so on, oftentimes this argument comes up that from nothing can come. So out of nothing can come, and therefore there needs to be a creator who created everything. The counter argument to that is often brought is, okay, fine, there needs to be something behind or some cause of everything that exists, but what is the cause of this creator then? Who creates this creator? And oftentimes this is then seen as, okay, you just go one step further and explain things we cannot understand with another thing we cannot understand, and therefore you have not solved anything. But this is actually not the case, because the idea that a creator would need a creator is nonsensical for several reasons. So for once, the problem that you try to solve is that in this world we have this basic principle of causality, which basically states that every cause or every effect has a cause, and therefore this universe being here is an effect. It's effectively here, so there has to be an effect, and this therefore has to have had a cause. There needs to be a cause behind it, and therefore in this world we have this law of causality, which basically states that, and which basically tells us that this universe here needs to there has to have been a cause behind it. However, once we have this, then we have at some point we can get to an ultimate cause, or to an original cause that caused everything, and that is beyond this, that even caused causality itself, and therefore is beyond this law of causality, and therefore does not fall under this law of causality, and therefore it does not need a cause. And this is basically the idea that the creator it's himself created causality itself, and therefore he is above causality, and therefore he does not need a cause. And that's so that's basically how you can resolve this, and that's also not basically arguing around or basically evading the question. It's really following logically out of this thinking that everything that is caused has to have had a cause, and the thing that is not under causality, is not under this law, can and does not need to be caused, and therefore you have this starting point basically from which everything was caused, but which itself does not need to have been caused, because it is not under this law. So I hope this was not too complicated, but this is basically the idea. So everything that is material, everything that is matter, everything in this universe needs a cause, needs a beginning, needs something that brought it to be, because of this law of causality, because of this law that every effect has to have a cause. Everything has to be caused by something, which is only true in this world, which is only true in this materialist, in this world of matter, in this universe that we know. In other places, we don't know them, so we can not know whether causality holds true there, but in principle, it can be that it is not, and it's also reasonable to assume that it is not. So therefore we can assume that something outside of this material world, outside of this, does not need this causality. Because also, if you look deeper into that, you can also see that out of our universe, we can see this also from relativity, out of our universe there is no time and space. Because time and space, we can notice from relativity, are basically concepts in this in this universe, and outside of it, they do not necessarily exist, and therefore we already see that causality cannot really exist outside of there, because causality needs time. You need to have a cause and then an effect. There needs to be a time difference between that. There needs to be a time when the cause occurs and the time where the effect occurs. If there's no time, you cannot have this causality, because there's no time, basically. And therefore, this is also the big idea behind the theory of relativity. The theory of relativity is basically trying to restore, not to restore, but to conserve causality for the case that the speed of light is constant in every frame of reference. So this is basically the observation of relativity, that the speed of light is constant in every frame of reference, and in order to save causality, you have to make all these conclusions that relativity makes. This is basically the idea behind it, and therefore causality is really something that is an integral part of our universe, but it is not at all an integral part of something outside of this universe. And therefore, you can clearly say that a God or a creator does not need somebody who creates it, or does not need any cause. You can really stop the chain there. You can really stop going further steps there, because this is really the final step, and it's also logical that it is a final step and that there are no steps behind it anymore. Okay, time for a short break. In this break, I just shortly want to mention other products that you can have except for this podcast. So for once, if you want to really learn more about the Sci-Faith podcast, I really recommend to you to get my book, Sci-Faith, The Compatibility of Science and Faith, which is available in English as an ebook. You can order it at Amazon. I really encourage you to read it, to get a deeper insight into the ideas behind Sci-Faith, how science and faith can be combined, how they are compatible, and in which way you can find this or combine them to each other. Also, if you like reading novels, especially if you're interested in science fiction, I recommend to you my book Alien Thoughts, which is also about technical topics. Also, these ideas of Sci-Faith are baked into this book, and many other ideas. Basically, the whole story of the gospel is told in a way in a science fiction story. So if you are interested in this, I really recommend it to you. This is also available as an ebook, also in English. And I also have, if you are familiar with the German language, I also have a new crime novel. It's called the Odysseus-Liste, where it is about basically a murder that needs to be, or it looks like a suicide, and it needs to be resolved. And there are many also interesting points in it about open source technology and so on. And also it has this idea behind Sci-Faith that you also find in my book, Sci-Faith, The Compatibility of Science and Faith. It's also in there. So I'm always, when I'm writing these books without this intention of putting these ideas into it, I'm always astonished that later I find that they still are in this, because those are basic principles, and I think it's interesting how they come up basically everywhere in every story and so on. And if you are interested in this, it's a pretty short book. You need to be able to read German, of course. It's only 75 pages or something, so it's a quick read, but it's also really exciting. And a really nice story, I think, and this you can also order at Thalia. And I'm looking into, maybe I can do an English version of this. I see what I can do, and if so, then I will announce it as soon as it is possible. Maybe also the books I mentioned right now, except for the last one, they are only available as ebooks. Maybe I will convert them into a print version that you can also get a print version of this. If you would be interested in this, if you say, I really would like to read those books, but I only read print versions, then let me know. Then I know there is a demand for that, and then I will try to put more effort into this endeavor. And if you have any kind of feedback to my books, or want to write a review, or want to get in touch with me, and you can always use the contact form at my webpage, sci-faith.de/en. I really like to hear from you and get any feedback from you, and also ideas for new podcast episodes and so feel free to contact me at any time. This, however, is not possible if you stick to the materialist worldview. If you say there's just matter, there's nothing else, then this does not work, because there's a different approach by some philosophers or scientists who have this basically brute fact interpretation, that they say some things in this world are just brute facts. You cannot explain them, you cannot find reasons for those, you cannot argue about them. They are just the way they are, and you just have to accept it. And then they say basically that the universe as it is, that the universe exists in the way it is, that it is there, is just such a brute fact. It's just the way it is. And this, on the other hand, is really awaiting the question. It is really just going around it and saying, okay, I cannot understand why the universe is here. I cannot understand how it came about, what caused it, or if anything caused it, or how it can be that nothing has caused it, and so on. And therefore, I just say it's a brute fact. It's just the way it is. And this therefore does not work. So you really need a God and a creator as an explanation, but a brute fact explanation just does not work out. It just does not work out, and therefore we already see that assuming a creator is not just one step further, just saying, okay, everything has a cause, and I say the cause is God. Instead, the cause of it is the universe itself, or something like that, some brute fact. It's not just going one step further to confirm some beliefs, but it is really a necessary step to be able to explain it, or to make a logical assumption about this universe, to also allow for truth, because as we have said, in a purely materialistic world there cannot be any truth, because truth itself is not materialistic, and for logic to exist, and therefore also for scientific reasoning to exist at all, for scientific truth to exist at all, there needs to be this one step beyond, and it actually needs just this one step beyond of a creator who created this universe. It just needs this one step, and this suffices, but leaving out this step is just not enough. It cannot explain it. It can maybe get this the look like it would explain it, or if you say it's a brute fact, I just define it this way, it looks like, okay, I just close the box on it and don't think about it anymore, and then it seems like it is solved, but actually it is not solved, of course. And therefore I think this step of saying, okay, everything has to have a cause, and therefore this universe has to have been created by a creator who is outside of this law of causality, and therefore has not have to have had a cause. I think this step is necessary. You cannot get around this step, and if you do, you're just awaiting the question. You are just awaiting this question that we have asked ourselves since the beginning of time, basically, who are we, where do we come from, and so on, which is basically all this question: where do we come from, what is our cause? And this cause, I think the only explanation is really logical, that makes sense, that is obvious, is the one that there is a creator behind it who created us, and this creator himself has created these natural laws, including the law of causality, and therefore he reigns over this law, and he's not under this law. He's outside of this law. He's outside of causality. He's outside of time and space, and therefore he does not need to be caused, because he is the ultimate cause. He's the original cause, basically. And therefore, I think I want to bring this point home, that this is really a necessary step, and that any step before that cannot solve the problem. And as I have said, even if you do it like that, if you say, okay, there is a brute fact and the universe is just here, it is just the way it is, period, then you run into problems like, for example, that there cannot be scientific truth anymore. There cannot be truth anymore. So the statement that you just made cannot be true, because there cannot be any truth. So this is basically how this runs into problems. And therefore, I just want to bring that point home once again, that you really need a creator to be able to explain the cause of the universe. And this creator itself does not need to be created, because he himself is the ultimate cause. So that's everything for today's episode. I hope you liked it and you enjoyed each part of it. If you want to get in touch with me or discuss a topic or want to give me some feedback, then feel free to contact me using the contact form on my website, sci-faith.de/en. And there you can go to the contact tab and contact me. And if you have any other things or episodes you want to have covered there, or topics you want to have covered, feel free to contact me there. Also, if you are not yet familiar with the format in which this podcast is produced, let me just briefly explain it to you. So there is always at the beginning of a month or of a block, there is a big block of 4 episodes in one thing. It's kind of like a preview, which I call it, where you have the next 4 episodes all in one episode together, combined. And this is for people who like to hear long format podcasts, who have a long way to work or something else, where they can listen to a long episode and can then have a preview of the next 4 episodes all at once, and are completely up to date from the beginning of the block. For those who like their episodes shorter, who prefer it if they have a half an hour or even less of a podcast episode, for those there is every week afterwards will appear a podcast episode almost in that length, and this way I can publish every week a new podcast every episode, and everyone can have it his own way, either once a month a long chunk of content, or once a week a shorter format podcast episode. So I think that's the best way for everyone, and also for me when I'm producing it. Please also note that this is an independent podcast, which means that it is recorded, produced, and marketed by me. So I really need your support in this. So if you like this podcast, then give it a 5-star rating. And if you have the time, even write a review to it. This just helps other listeners to become aware of this podcast, and then people who might be interested in this content can become aware of it. Also, if you have friends who you think would like this content, then recommend it to them and share it with them. Also, you can support me in other ways, for example by reading my blog and subscribing to my newsletter, or even by reading my books, which you can find on Amazon. For example, there is My latest novel out now is Alien Thoughts, which is pretty entertaining from the feedback that I gotten, and so it's also in some way related to science and faith. The topic of it is also in there, but of course you can also read the book to this podcast, Sci-Faith, The Compatibility of Science and Faith, which is also available in English since last year. Thank you for that, and now I wish you a wonderful day, and I'm looking forward for you to tune in again next time.